it feels like it's so vast.
Yeah.
It's like the mission to Mars.
You need to be on the right side of change. I definitely see AI as a transformation. I've always been around that big change.
Just look back a year ago. What is it? The Will Smith animation where he's eating spaghetti. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
And it's a mess.
Yeah.
But you look at it now and it's just immaculate.
I think that's probably the tip of the iceberg.
You'll have the best surgeon in the world will be a robot in the next 2 years.
I think the opportunity far outweighs some of the risks.
There's a big scaremongering thing going on. Elon Musk telling us that the Terminator's happening.
It was going to solve the world. It was going to solve every problem that we had in the world. There was a big hype cycle around it. Everybody got really excited by it.
At what point are we at risk of data for data's sake?
I was in LA a couple of years ago and saw the driverless taxis. That was kind of mind-blowing at the time. And now I look back and I think 2 years later, it's okay. I get it now.
What advice would you give to occupiers, to landlords, when it comes to making mature decisions about this tool called AI?
Starting a project with an assumption that the tools that you will need to use haven't yet been invented.
But what are your thoughts on this doomsday is coming?
Where I think we're going to make a big leap potentially with AI as the context is...
So I have an office move coming up. What advice would you give to me?
Okay. Well, I would say...
Welcome to the Future Workplace podcast. Delighted to have you with me. Now, for those who are regular listeners of mine or viewers of my channel, you will see that I'm in a completely different location because thankfully, Midwich have given me their podcast studio for us to record this podcast in. All we ask for us to continue to provide value to you and content to you, all we ask is that you like, you subscribe. That gives us the ability to bring more experts on to talk about the future workplace. Now, you cannot talk about the future workplace without talking about AI. So I am absolutely delighted to welcome today Stephen Edward, MD of PTS. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast, and I'm delighted to
thanks for inviting me.
Bring you in. Now, I very, very quickly mentioned AI. We're going to get into that in a minute. I'm probably going to, go down all sorts of rabbit holes. But for the purposes of people watching this, who are you? What do you do? Who are you? Why have we said that you're a good person to speak to about AI?
Okay. Well, from a PTS perspective, we are a technology consultancy business. We operate predominantly in the built environment. So workplace is a well understood environment for us. We also have the benefit of not only being a group of technologists and delivery experts. So we're thinking about AI from the perspective of our own business and our own evolution, but also have the the benefit of consulting on AI with various clients as well. So we are helping people think about AI and implement AI in their own organizations and in the workplace particularly. So that's it's quite an interesting place to be at the moment.
Yeah, and it seems like a really large bracket at the moment. I think we spoke a little bit up before we started recording here, is it feels like it's so vast.
Yeah.
It's like the mission to Mars.
Yeah.
No one actually knows what's going on at the moment.
It is definitely a broad topic.
Yeah.
And thinking about the relevance for the audience in the podcast today, I can talk for days about AI because I'm sort of quite excited about it as a technology. But we could talk about it from a people, a process perspective. We can talk about it in terms of what it means to the industry that we're all in. We can talk about it in terms of what it means from a client perspective and what they're seeking to, I think, benefit from. Yeah. So I can cover all of those bases, depending on where you'd like the conversation to go.
Look,
really.
I just enjoy the human conversation, so I'm very much the layman in this conversation.
Okay.
But I think before we start getting into it, I want to just kind of add a little bit of context around you. Mm-hmm. Take me back. We mentioned before you've been in this industry for 35 years. Let's go right back. Were you always the guy that was opening radios at home? And where did this passion come from? Take me all the way back to the start.
Probably, yeah. When I was in education, I thought I'd get into electronic engineering and sort of fell into computing at the birth of the PC. Mm-hmm. So going back to 35 years, I've been, as my children actually have reminded me, I was around when the PC was introduced into the office from mainframe. And, I was the guy I was the guy in the office that knew about PCs, and sort of spent the early part of my career sort of building on that. I was also around when the internet became a thing, and navigated that from a technology perspective, mobile phones, smartphones. And so really AI now is, for me, I mean, it's exciting to be around, but it is just another really new, exciting technology that we're all about to embrace and come to terms with. I think, I've spent probably the last 25 years really working on transformation. So going back to the people, process and technology components of that, and navigating that from a cultural perspective as much as a skills or an organizational perspective has been an exciting journey. I think I definitely see AI as a transformation, and its application as a transformation, and I've always been around that big change. Right? So whether it be defining what the future looks like, helping other people understand what the future looks like, dealing with the change from what people are currently doing towards that, and then quite often dealing with the legacy that's left behind that no one wants to deal with.
Yeah, so and I definitely want to go down that route because, like, the podcast is called The Future Workplace, right? The whole purpose of us having a conversation is to try and package up a nice little sentence to say, what does the future workplace look like? It's not going to happen, but that's the goal of the conversation. We're talking about AI, right? Speak to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. What is it? What is AI?
Well, actually, AI has been around for a long time. Right? So AI is, depending on what you read about, is decades old. So I mean, it's really the application of different models and different algorithms to solve problems for you. Now, it's currently sort of predicated in society with what's called generative AI, which is ChatGPT and other tools, which allow you to surface knowledge, really quickly and sort of preempt what you want to understand or apply. I think that's probably the tip of the iceberg, if I'm honest with you. And I think one of the previous guests that we were talking to outside was, talking about ChatGPT and, how they're using it to create documents and accelerate various different things in their workplace. But I think really when we talk about AI in terms of its potential to help us automate, a lot of that goes unseen behind the scenes. So for example, if you wanted to perform some analytics on how people behave in the workplace, or facial recognition technology, security systems, access control, all of those solutions will have, probably at some level already, if not in the future, definitely, AI technology which powers them.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing in our personal lives and in our domestic lives and on our smartphones and everything else is cool.
Yeah.
But it's very much one dimension of AI that is the underlying fabric of technology, a bit like cloud. I mean, the more I think about AI now, and going back to my history, if you will, and think about what cloud was when it first emerged. Yeah. It was going to solve the world. It was going to solve every problem that we had in the world. There was a big hype cycle around it. Everybody got really excited by it. Skills were at a premium. Some people's jobs disappeared. Yeah. New jobs were created. If you were in that time when you supported servers in a data center, those jobs probably no longer exist. Yeah. But guess what? New jobs do exist. There are things like cloud engineers and so on and so on. So conceptually, I think it's similar, right? In terms of it's a new technology. People need to understand it, learn about it, make mistakes. Yeah. I think that's another part of it. And over time, whether that's, the time scale is an interesting dimension to this, because
just look back a year ago, right? A year ago, what is it? The Will Smith animation where he's eating spaghetti. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a mess. Yeah. But you look at it now, and it's just immaculate.
I think that's the one thing that I would think sort of is distinct with this particular technology, is that the things that it's going to touch are much broader. If you think about cloud computing as my analogy, that was a technology space that most people didn't really think about unless you were actually in tech or you were managing tech. But because AI has the ability, and it will touch everybody. It will touch you as a dad, or a child, and as a member of society. And if you're in technology or a technology-related business or organisation, then it will be both an enabler for your future success, I believe. And it will absolutely be a threat for you as well, depending on how you look at it.
And is that kind of what it means for the layman? I'm at risk here of starting to go down the political and kind of social justice route, which I want to avoid a little bit. But picket lines, right? Coal, Margaret Thatcher, everyone kicking off because they're closing down the coal yards and all this kind of stuff. Are we at risk of that kind of thing happening?
Well, I think you'll get a lot of people protesting against things like privacy and job loss, inevitably. But I don't think it's really. I mean, the scale of it and the pace of it might be the thing which is potentially different. This time around. I'm optimistic about AI. I mean, I would say that because I'm a technologist, perhaps. But I'm also a dad. Of a certain age where I'm, maybe towards the tail end of my career as opposed to at the beginning of my career. So I get the fact that it is, concerning for a lot of people. But I personally, I'm very optimistic, and I think you need to be on the right side of change, whatever change is. You can choose how you look at change, I think. I think the opportunity far outweighs some of the risks, and we need to roll with it. But I think the pace, going back to the pace point for a moment, one of the things that I think is really relevant at the moment in terms of the type of businesses that we're all in is just how quickly you can absorb the new skills that you need to be successful and understand AI. If you're a lay person, how quickly can you get from being a lay person to someone who's a bit more savvy or a bit more sort of hands-on or au fait with it. And if you're in a in any kind of tech context where you use tech on a day-to-day basis, what's made you successful for the past 10 or 20 years is not necessarily what's going to make you successful going forward. So it's progress, it's change, it's evolution. I went to a really interesting discussion a few months ago, and it was talking about skills, particularly as one of the things which will hold us back. You could argue it's holding us back as a nation, but certainly in some of the businesses that we're in. The half-life of skills, and if you remember or if you've studied sort of physics, or there's a half-life to atomic sort of particles, and there's a really interesting model. Maybe I'll reference it in sort of some of the follow-up on this podcast, but it talks about if you learn something new, how long it's relevant for. And if you go back sort of 25 years, or when I started my career and you were learning things like COBOL or some of these sort of languages which, you'd learn something, you spend a lot of time learning something, and it would be valuable for your career for maybe 10 years, 15 years if you're lucky, before you needed to refresh and learn something new. And, over time, those things the half-life has got shorter and shorter and shorter. And now, depending on some of the who you read, the half-life of what you learn now with AI is about 6 months before something else gets sort of created. And that can be exhausting. I mean, I've the last few months, you spend some time reading about something or grappling with it, and you understand a concept, and you think, I'm going to use that tool, or we're going to follow that path. And then come Monday morning, that's already out of date. And some of the people that are really at the coalface of AI, if you're in software engineering or when you're doing sort of application development in that world, you're starting a project with an assumption that the tools that you will need to use haven't yet been invented. So you have to make some pretty big punts in terms of how you're going to get through a project from start to finish, or an investment. It's a good point. So I think lots of challenges. Many of them people related, people, skills, culture, change, technology. My experience has been over my career that technology, kind of solves itself to an extent, because if you get the right people, with the right mindset, doing the right things, then other things, great things happen.
Out the technology,
right? and the technology will be implemented that works to solve a problem.
And we mentioned that, didn't we, on when we were chatting just before this, around people when they talk about AI in the workplace, they talk about tools, they talk about the technology.
Yeah.
But actually, what you're referring to there is the human is integral to the fact that the technology kind of follows itself. Can you elaborate on that?
So I've been successful in technology over the years because I very rarely start with a technology solution.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it's as a consultant as well as worked independently as a consultant. What are you trying to solve? That is the question, not what tool do you want to use for this week or next week. So that for me just reinforces that in this context as well, in AI and in the workplace, that's still the right question to ask. For us at PTS and with our clients, the user experience is always first and foremost. And I think one of your previous guests, earlier we were talking about the same thing, and they were saying the same thing. The user experience in the workplace, things have to work, things have to be frictionless, things have to evolve and adapt. And I think that's probably not always been the case, because traditionally, things have been designed and implemented and they're operated, and there's a sort of life cycle associated with that. But the return to office, or COVID and the hybrid working patterns and all of those things now are requiring actually that workplaces are far more adaptive and frictionless, and can learn as well in a sort of, not in an abstract sense, but in an actual sense. Learn from how many people are in the building. Learn that it was perhaps too warm in a room, and that has detrimental effects to behavioural, cognitive sort of effectiveness. So we've called that smart technology over the past few years. But really, what that is, going back to the AI topic, is a whole bunch of sensors, installed, and analytics and AI technology that is driving analytics and providing insights. And the question is, what do you do with the insights? And that's the thing which continually drives the user experience.
That's a really valid point. And we're in a market here where we're trying to deliver workplaces, right? And you're trying to look ahead 5 years. We mentioned with a previous guest, his journey's been a 3-4 year journey, and they're only now going into build. Right? Yeah. So the question I've got then is, if people are engaging you to try and, as a consultant, to talk about what the next 5, 6, 7 years plan is, and the deployment that they need to go through, and considering the pace of change of AI, what is that advice?
The advice, I think it comes down to a set of principles, right? Which we will typically always help our clients with. One is the data. So if you need to think about flexibility and user experience and adaptability and all the things that I've sort of talked about over the last few minutes, you need to be more joined up in your thinking. So traditionally, if you engage in any kind of workplace context, you have, you deal with the IT department and you deal with the facilities department. There might be other departments that you have to deal with, whether it be sort of in operations or if you're talking about AV, it might be marketing or sales or so on and so on. They, in my experience, have always operated in silos organisationally, and for the large part, still continue to do so, if I'm brutally honest. So, part of the success of future-proofing, I think, in the workplace is making sure that you're much more joined up in your thinking between all of those disciplines, which will ultimately drive, your experience in the workplace. Now, whether that's, we deal with a very broad cross section of client types. So whether your user experience is a traditional corporate office environment, so your users are typically your staff, but not always your staff. It could be a hospital where or a university where your users are effectively a combination of both your staff and either patients or students, and that creates a very different set of dynamics when we're dealing with clients and actually we're thinking about the user experience of their clients as much as their own staff.
Yeah.
If you are, in a data center, for example, as a workplace, it might be a bit more industrial, right? It might be that you have robots walking around or automated trolleys, or even in a warehouse context or retail, so the user experience really varies. But I think having that joined up thinking across all of your organizational functions, so that what you end up delivering as a workplace actually is truly joined up.
And it's back to the human element, right? So everything that you're explaining here relates back to the first point that we made, which was kind of forget the tools.
Yeah.
Think about the human element. What is the point of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, that's certainly true.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the podcast so far. I'm just going to take a quick 30 seconds of your time to explain to you one of the biggest problems that people have when it comes to fitting out their new office space. And that problem is they get AV in too late. When you get AV in too late, what happens is they treat it as an afterthought. They treat it as a bolt-on. It's a few screens on a wall. Let's just put some screens on and make it work. Massive, massive, massive mistake. And we see it day in, day out, where people treat AV as an afterthought. To try and avoid that mistake, you need to bring AV in, the design of AV in really early as you possibly can. Now, to try and help you with that, we've put together what we called an AV bundle. It's a bundle. The link is in the description below, and it gives you the ability to configure your own AV meeting room, so you know what solution you're putting in the rooms. It gives you a risk map for the project, so you know when to bring AV in, and it gives you a budget calculator so that you can budget AV in early as opposed to later when you realize that AV, frankly, isn't as cheap as what everybody thinks. So grab the bundle below. Get AV in as early as you possibly can and avoid the mistakes that lots of our clients actually do when it comes to refitting their offices.
I think the other thing which you touched on is data. I think we spent the last 4 or 5 years as a industry making buildings smart, let's say, which has traditionally meant putting sensors in.
Yeah.
Just install loads of sensors and the building will sort of somehow become smart.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a box ticking exercise, really. It's the data. So what do you do when your building now generates more data than a 747?
Yeah.
That data is very rich, and it contains all sorts of things which you can use to make the building better from an experience perspective, more sustainable, more energy efficient. So you look at the business case associated with that, and that's important. But I think the other angle to look at this, and this is actually thinking about what I've seen in terms of the evolution of technology maturity over the year generally, is data governance and data ownership.
Gotcha.
So when you have all this rich data that's sort of being spat out of various systems, who owns that? What's happening with that? Who's analysing it? Who's using it for what? Is it of good quality? Is it of poor quality?
And why?
And why?
I mean, I'm a football fan, right? I follow Liverpool. Sorry about that, Scott. Scott's my editor's a big West Ham fan, but that Liverpool went down this route of data recruitment, right? And it's great if you get it right, but then you get like XG and you get all of these pass maps, all this kind of stuff, and it's just a bit like, so what? Did we win or not?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So again, I'm speaking from a layman here, like. At what point do we are we at risk of data for data's sake?
Well, I think it's inevitable that data is going to be amongst us. Data is not going anywhere. I think as a layperson, and you think about that sort of football, there's most of that data you probably don't care about.
Yeah.
But someone does care about it.
Yeah.
And if you think about the workplace context, the people that need to care about that data are the people that care about the environmental conditions in the building, or whether the building should be occupied or not at certain days of the week. I mean, there is some really good examples out there of pretty smart buildings that seem to have got it right at the moment, where they've got lots of data, tens and tens of thousands of sort of endpoints generating data. That data ultimately influences and can directly control all of the environmental controls, whether certain parts of the building are actually locked off at certain days of the week because it's just not economical to open them up to people because
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Because there's not enough people coming in.
Yeah, I get it.
So, where I think we're going to make a big leap potentially with AI as the context is, at the moment we still have lots of data, there's lots of screens with insight on them and sort of recommendations that are coming out. So there's sort of the chat GPT example, it will make some recommendations for you.
Yeah.
And it's still up to us to decide what we do with that. As we move forward into more of a sort of an agentic view of AI, which is where it will, where technology will start making decisions and optimize itself.
Yeah.
That's a threshold, I think, for a lot of people, which is the point of discomfort. Going back to the sort of, am I devolving decisions to technology?
Yeah.
And I think, from a human perspective, that's going to be uncomfortable. That's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and we get a little bit. Media probably doesn't help with this next statement, but there's a big scaremongering thing going on. Elon Musk telling us that the Terminator's happening, and he's got his his Oculus robots that are he's going to put them everywhere. What are your thoughts on this? I think I know, but what are your thoughts on this doomsday is coming?
I mean, I know it's a populist view.
Yeah.
And it hasn't helped because there's been tons of sci-fi kind of films over the past decade or two that sort of don't help, right? Because it paints a picture. My personal view is that we need to be doing probably more than we are doing as a society, big tech, and as a country around control and risk in that space, because it is quite easy now to technically quite easy to put things in place which you don't know where they're going to end up, right? You don't know whether it's going to end up in a data protection issue, bringing it back to sort of reality. That's probably the most likely scenario where we've got data which is being is out there, which and you don't know how it's being used and for what purposes. But I think the ethics around AI is quite a complex. I think the points that you're making, which is are we going to be sort of overrun by Big Brother and big tech and robots anytime soon. I mean, I think I'm not wanting to dodge the question because I think
question.
I think it's a valid point of view. I mean, we've done a lot of thinking around this from a not exactly that question, but just trying to get a sense of what the timeline looks like for some of these events, inevitable or otherwise, right? Are we talking about 6 months, 2 years, 6 years, 10 years, or is it sort of never going to happen and it's all just speculation? I mean, I probably think that in 5 years' time, on my personal perspective, that we will be seeing some very different technologies and ways of working and norms. I think that's what it comes down to. If you think about this sort of change curve again, I think there will be, in 5 years' time, probably some things which we'll look back on now and think, well, of course that was going to happen. Why did we worry about it?
It's just normal.
It's just
normal.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in LA a couple of years ago and saw the driverless taxis.
Yeah.
And that was kind of mind blowing at
Yeah.
the time and to be alongside a car that was driving with no human in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of, and now I look back and I think 2 years later, well, it's okay. I get it now. And now the prospect is that's coming to parts of the UK, or at least on a trial basis. So I think these things will happen. So the timeline is unclear. And the best answer I've got for you is when will some of these things start to happen? Probably quicker than you realise.
Everything I'm watching, I was in the gym this morning.
Quicker than you realise, but perhaps not as quick as the press would.
Yeah, everything that I was in the gym this morning, and I knew I had this conversation with you. I was scrolling through a few of Elon Musk's things and Nvidia and all that kind of stuff. But again, I knew I was chatting to you. Elon Musk was at a conference just a couple of weeks ago where the question was, is it Oculus? Oculus is his robot, the robot that he's
the humanoid.
Yeah, and the question was, how quickly do you think Oculus is going to be able to do real dexterity-rich activities? And the specific question was, how quickly can they become the best surgeon in the world? Clearly, there's a commercial reasoning behind Elon Musk's answer because he's selling humanoid robots.
Yeah.
He went within the next 2 years. You'll have the best surgeon in the world will be a robot in the next 2 years. I mean, how you train a robot to have empathetic feeling and to, to not, if things go wrong, I don't know. But his answer was within the next 2 years, 2-3 years, the best surgeons will be.
I mean, possibly. I mean, from a technical,
I think there's a commercial
from a technical. I mean, going back to the pure technical answer to that, it's quite possible because I mean, there's so much investment that's going into to proving the technology. That it's inevitable that some of these things will happen, right? I think the bigger question is one of ethics. It's one of security and compliance. It's one of insurance and liability and all of the commercial wrap around bringing some of those things to market. Couple of examples. So a few years back, I was working in insurance, and one of the challenges then was to think about liability of driverless cars. And
who is liable?
So you just open up a whole world of questions there. We are, although talking about the sort of humanoids, we are doing some projects at the moment that are exploring workplaces that have to be designed for non-human use cases.
Crazy,
right? So the premise being that if some of these buildings or new builds come on stream, say in 2030 or the early 2030s, that could be at the point where some of these robots or assistants, are a reality. So therefore, how do you design your building for charging, capacity for charging, physical access? Maybe that has to be different. Maybe that has to be wider. Maybe you have goods lifts for robots to use, like kind of dumb waiters, if I could use the historic analogy. An API in an API-driven world. So how do you open doors and summon lifts contactlessly, as opposed to pushing a button that because you're a human, you push a button. So that sort of basis of design and that kind of what I thought was, if we'd have talked about this 2 years ago, would have been very abstract and futurology, is now actually appearing in live design requirements.
Crazy.
So yes, that's kind of makes it exciting, but it does make it feel a little bit like science fiction at times.
And we've spoken a little bit about the human, right? So let's put my coffee down quickly. The human element of landlords, of occupiers. AI is a tool, right? Which we've already determined. What advice would you give to occupiers, to landlords, when it comes to making mature decisions about this tool called AI?
Well, I don't think I don't think that's the right question. If I'm
Hit
honest
me with the
you.
right question.
I think what I would always go back to is, what are you trying to achieve? You know, as an occupier, as a landlord, or as a visitor to a building, you know, or whatever your role is, you know, what are you trying to achieve with that space, you know, or that building? So if you're an occupier, or you're a corporate and you lease a building, you know, you want to I think you want to maximize the user experience, and you want to operate that experience very efficiently and effectively, for the most part,
Yeah.
you know, and sustainably. So that's what you want to achieve, and then you just need to work out how best you can leverage technology like AI to help you along that journey.
Yeah.
If you're an owner of a building, then, or you're an investor, then you want to make sure you maximize the lifetime value of that asset. So you're thinking about it slightly differently. But I think it probably still comes back to ultimately things like the user experience, because the buildings that are, you know, in quotes, the best, however you want to measure that, are going to be the premium buildings that everybody wants to either rent or acquire from you. So the question for me is not really sort of how you think about AI and sort of what that means to you. Is if you think about it like another technology, it's just how do you best leverage that to make it, you know, the best it can be, whether it be from an experience perspective, flexible, sustainable, economical, all of those things, which are quite boring. They're not technical questions really, I mean, that's probably my answer.
Probably my answer. Very similar. The theme's the same, right?
Yeah.
It start with the end user requirements in mind, and work your way back from there.
And I think the how, if I go back to sort of just build on that, you know, the how is by being more joined up in your thinking. So if you're thinking about, you know, if you're a excuse me, a landlord, be more joined up in your thinking about who you engage as your set of stakeholders. Right. And your set of stakeholders are not just going to be the facilities group or the operations team, depending on sort of what sector you're in. It's about bringing together all of those sort of disciplines and solving those things together. And because historically that's not really how it's been. You know, historically organizations are still quite siloed, I think, in organizational terms. And I think the other thing I would say from an industry perspective is we're not the best at being joined up either. I mean, we can see that from a PTS perspective, because we quite often operate at the intersection between, you know, IT and facilities, and we deal with, you know, supply chain partners, and we deal with clients who sometimes are one step removed from the project. So all of those things don't help, right? Because we've all got sort of commercial imperatives,
of course,
and we're sometimes competing with each other. So that's another thing to sort of acknowledge. But they are barriers to being more joined up sometimes. And I think the more what we're trying to do at PTS, and what I'm trying to do personally, is build more awareness of that, and start to build more communities of practice and communities of interest around some of these things, you know, to be more joined up. Because I think ultimately it will benefit us all. Ultimately it will benefit all of our end clients.
Of course it will.
Sooner or later, we've just got to be more joined up along the journey. And I think that the final thought on that question was, I think there will be new jobs that emerge, new roles which emerge. So going back to the smart building example, where we've got, you know, smart building, 10,000 sensors, rivers of data, sea of data, that the people that are exploiting that and leveraging that the best have almost created a building CTO.
Right.
So you can almost see that some of the traditional roles in maybe IT or facilities will evolve, let's say, into a sort of more hybrid role. So you have a sort of hybrid tech facilities operations manager. I mean, I'm sort of likening it to a CTO because I'm from a tech background.
Yeah, gotcha.
But you know, that conceptually is probably where I would see organizational evolution, and I think that will only help the the landlords, the occupiers, really get to where they need to get to.
Yeah, measuring the data.
Yeah.
We need to sort of start looking to round this up, because obviously I'm always conscious that I don't want to hammer it out for too long a period of time. What I want to try and do is package it into a nice little bowl and say, this is what you need to do. I know that's probably impossible, but given that that's the end goal of what I want to try and achieve with this conversation with you, if I have an office move coming up over the next 5 years, outside of the fact that come and speak to PTS, because because we will consult on all of that, thinking specifically around the AI side of things, if I have an office move coming up, a lease event in 3 years' time, what advice would you give to me?
Okay. Well, I would say think about how mature you are in your thinking about office moves at the moment, how joined up you are. I mean, I'll sort of keep banging on about that sort of joined up thinking. So look at your maturity. Look at the skills that you've got or you haven't got around workplace, tech, AI. I mean, a lot of companies don't carry those kind of things in-house, which is why they go to companies like yours or ours to help, right? But I think be honest with yourself about what you know and what you don't know, and think about the business problems that you're trying to solve with your workplace or your project, whatever that. It doesn't have to be a workplace; it could be a sort of technology transformation more generally. But really start with that. Start with the why. Then think about what are you trying to achieve, and then how. From a skills perspective, from a process perspective, from an organizational perspective, and I think once you start answering those questions for yourself or with help from others, then I think the path forward is a lot clearer typically. And I think there's another point around life cycle. So you can design something, and you can sort of design, build, and operate is always a sort of bit of a mantra that perhaps you recognise. Don't think about that as a straight line. I mean, that's the other thing, because with multi-year programs, big capital investment programs typically take years to come off, and quite often once you design something, and then by the time it gets implemented, it's already out of date. I mean,
that's spoke about the speed of maturity on AI already, haven't we?
That's typical. I mean, that was typical prior to AI. Just with the pace of new technology anyway. But I think about the how you approach it from almost like a flexible perspective. So don't necessarily think about it as a sort of traditional waterfall project where you design something, you procure it, you implement it, and you build it, and then it's sort of operated. You need to almost think about the operational side of it up front. I mean, typically, we go back to that smart perspective. If you're really serious about smart, and you're really serious about the outcomes that you need, you want to achieve, then you need to do a lot of that thinking up front.
There's a theme to this chat,
rather than downstream.
There's a theme to this chat, which seems to be think about the end and reverse engineer it from that point on, and the tools are the tools, and you go from there. We need to round up. I'm really sorry to kind of cut you off there.
No problem.
If anyone needs to get in touch with you, if anyone's interested to talk to you around their future office plans, how can they get in touch with you?
I mean, the best way forward just from this conversation is just to email me directly, stephen.edward@pts.global. You can find me on LinkedIn or on the website. I always love to talk about AI. I will come and talk to anybody.
Brilliant.
And always enjoy the conversation. So thank you.
Brilliant. Stephen, thank you. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Great. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I certainly enjoyed having that guest on. Now, in order for us to close this podcast out, what I want to do is just highlight to you that we're an AV company. That's pretty clear. But what we do with a lot of our clients is we offer them showroom visits, basically. So we quite often go around a lot of the showrooms that are available to us. We're doing a big LED showroom visit. So if you want to come and see some of the latest LED technology that you can deploy within your meeting room, we're doing a big LED showroom visit over the coming weeks. The date's not fully confirmed yet, but we have put together a wait list. The link to that wait list is in the description below. If you're interested in coming along and seeing the latest LED and what you can deploy within your office space and the art of the possible when it comes to LED, click the link below, join the wait list. When we've got the date confirmed for our showroom visit, we'll then invite you to that showroom. We'll show you what the art of the possible is. For now, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you see the next one as well.